Week 4 is almost in the books. We got 2 Monday Night Football matchups tonight, but before those games even come to conclusion, we are going to be looking into the waiver wire for week number 5. Now, if something crazy happens in tonight's game, I will just discuss that in the comment section. I'll pin a comment telling you guys to add different players if the priority would change. In today's video, we're going to be going over 10 plus players that I believe you don't need to just walk, you need to run to the waiver wire to pick up prior to week number 5. If you are new to the channel and you do end up enjoying today's video, please make sure that you do hit that subscribe button down below. So without further ado, let's get into my week number 5 waiver wire ads for the 2025 fantasy football season. We begin with my number 1 waiver wire ad of the week, Woody Marks, running back of the Houston Texans, going up against the Baltimore Ravens in Baltimore this week, and he is currently rostered in 37% of leagues on Sleeper. Now, we have talked about Woody Marks a couple of times in these waiver wire videos to start off the season, but this week is the week where now, if you don't already have him on your team, you are going to have to unload the quote-unquote fab clip in order to pick him up if you play in a league with fab. If you do not, then he is worthy of your number 1 waiver priority. According to Aaron Wilson, NFL, a trusted source, Joe Mixon remains without a specific timetable for when or if he will return this season. So to me, that sounds like things aren't overly optimistic. The news isn't very positive at all for the health of Joe Mixon, and I said this all summer. It would not surprise me at all based on the news that was coming out in the summer after his injury, if he even was able to going to actually play this season, and that seems like even more of a possibility right now in week number 5. Running back 6 last week for Woody Marks versus the Tennessee Titans in PPR. Now, this is prior to Monday Night Football, so all of the waiver wire ads will likely have different finishes by the end of those 2 games. 17 carries for 69 yards. Very nice. I like. And a touchdown, as well as 4 receptions on 5 targets for 50 yards and an additional touchdown. Week 4 was the first game on the season in which Woody Marks outsnapped Nick Chubb, and he clearly outplayed him as well. Marks played in 56% of the snaps. Nick Chubb played 42% of the snaps. So while the Houston Texans offense as a whole definitely is worrisome, the fact that their offensive line is as bad as it is definitely is a very large concern. But when you have the pass catching ability of a guy like Woody Marks, it doesn't matter as much. Obviously, I would prefer if I had Woody Marks on my fantasy team that they had one of the best O-lines in the NFL. But frankly, I can't just snap my fingers and make that happen. I can't rub on one of those genie thingies to have a genie show up and give me 3 wishes. And if I got 3 wishes, I certainly would not wish for a better offensive line for the Houston Texans. I would wish for the Dolphins to win a fucking playoff game in my lifetime. So Woody Marks going up against the Baltimore Ravens, I definitely do like him this week. And again, you are down bad. You need a running back too. You need to pay up to get Woody Marks this week. Next up, we move to Wan'Dale Robinson, wide receiver of the New York Football Giants, going up against the New Orleans Saints in New Orleans this week. 64% rostered over on Sleeper. Wide receiver 64 in week 4 versus the Chargers in PPR. 3 receptions on 5 targets for 14 yards. Ryan Heath put on Twitter the Giants' target share from the 36 minutes after Malik Neighbors went down. Malik Neighbors, sadly, is out for the season. The MetLife turf takes yet another victim. It is honestly shocking that they still don't put grass in that stadium. Even more shocking is when you learn that when the World Cup comes to MetLife to play in New Jersey, they're going to put grass on the field, and then they're going to take it off and put that shitty turf back down. It makes absolutely no sense. But in that time, without Malik Neighbors, Theo Johnson had a 30.8% target share, the tight end one on the team. Wan'Dale, 30.8%. Darius Slayton, 15.4%. And Amascat, man, played 15.4% for Cam Skattebo. 2 games this season with over 11 plus points. Now, he has cooled down over the last 2 weeks, but he does seem to be the clear number 1 wide receiver on paper. So if he is available in your league, you need to go ahead and pick him up right now. And based upon how Jaxson Dart looked up against the solid Chargers defense, you got to feel great about the outlook of this offense now compared to how it projected with Russell Wilson under center. At number 3, we got Romeo Doubs, wide receiver of the Green Bay Packers. The Packers are on bye this week, 45% rostered on Sleeper. Now, Romeo Doubs had an incredible game on Sunday Night Night Football up against the Dallas Cowboys. An incredible game that was so good that it ended in a tie, though it was a scoregami. We have never seen a game finish with that total before. I believe it was 41-41 off the top of my head. 6 receptions on 8 targets for 58 yards and not 1, not 2, but 3 touchdowns as the wide receiver 3 in PPR last week up against the Cowboys in Jerry's world. The odds that Romeo Doubs has that good of a game again this season is very low. Frankly, I would be fucking shocked if the guy scored 3 touchdowns again this season. It'd be crazy for any wide receiver to score 3 touchdowns multiple times in 1 year, even if they're one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. So when it comes to a guy like Romeo Doubs, I definitely do not expect that. But it's become abundantly clear that Doubs is the wide receiver 1 on this team in terms of snaps. And while I like Matthew Golden and while Dontavian Wicks has shown off some ability, Romeo Doubs is the guy. 90% of the snaps for Doubs, 77% for Dontavian John Wicks, 59% for Matthew Golden, 23% for Heath, and 12% for Savion Williams. Again, Doubs has led the team in snaps every single game. Wicks has been the wide receiver 2 in snaps 1 game. Golden has been the wide receiver 2 in snaps in the other 3 games. So while there is a lot of confusion around the Packers wide receiver core because they essentially utilize the Oprah Winfrey offense, and what that means, and I've used this term for years, is you get the ball, you get the ball, you all get the ball. Check under your seat, Romeo Doubs, because you got a ball underneath your seat. Shout out to Oprah Winfrey. That was a shame when Josh from Drake and Josh ran her over. Romeo Doubs is not the best receiver in the NFL. But again, if you're going to see that many snaps on an offense like the Packers with that much touchdown upside, you need to be rostered. Next up, we got Jaxson Dart, quarterback of the New York Football Giants, going up against the New Orleans Saints in New Orleans this week. 35% rostered over on Sleeper. Quarterback 8 in week 4 versus the LA Chargers. 13 of 20 for 111 yards and a touchdown, as well as 10 rushes for 54 yards and a touchdown. I thought Jaxson Dart performed incredibly well based upon the matchup that was put in front of him, and based on the fact that they did end up choosing to just put him in not after a bye week, which was the thought of most people this summer was, hey, while things might not go well for Russell Wilson, he probably is able to keep his job until the bye week, and then they will elect to give Jaxson Dart more time over the bye week to prepare. He'll have a longer time to prepare for the opponent, but no, they flipped that instantly after Russell Wilson was a complete and utter fucking disaster in week number 3. So Jaxson Dart losing Malik Neighbors is a huge loss, right? This is not the kind of loss that just goes unnoticed, right? Malik Neighbors is one of the best wide receivers in the NFL, but if Jaxson Dart is able to be running the ball at the rate that he was able to run up against the LA Chargers, I promise you that even without Malik Neighbors, Jaxson Dart is going to be an incredibly valuable player for your fantasy team and should be rostered at this point, even if you're in just a 1 quarterback league. If you're in a league where, you kind of don't trust your quarterback 1, Jaxson Dart definitely needs to be at minimum on your bench. Next up, we got Brenton Strange, tight end of the Jacksonville Jaguars, going up against the Kansas City Chiefs at home in Duval. 33% rostered on Sleeper for Brenton Strange. Tight end 14 last week in PPR at San Francisco. 6 receptions on 7 targets for 45 yards. Back-to-back games with 6 receptions on 7 targets. Strange is the clear tight end 1 on this team. He has played 70+% of the snaps in all games and has played 80% of the snaps in 2 of 4 games. Say what you want about Trevor Lawrence, say what you want about this offense as a whole, but Brenton Strange is getting heavily utilized. The tight end position this year in fantasy football is topsy and turvy. It is very, very, very difficult to week in and week out find a tight end, especially off the waiver wire, that you actually trust. And even tight ends that you drafted, right? Mark Andrews, far from reliable. Evan Ingram, maybe he goes off tonight, but hasn't done jack shit. He's been hurt. David Njoku, he got his chain snatched by fucking Harold Fannin, right? Things aren't going well at the tight end position. So if you don't trust your tight end right now, Brenton Strange should be on your team. Next up, we move to Elic Ayomanor, wide receiver of the Tennessee Titans, going up against the Arizona Cardinals in Arizona this week. 57% rostered on Sleeper, and I am genuinely shocked that he is not rostered in more leagues. We've been talking about Ayomanor since week number 1, talking about the upside that he possesses in this offense. And while the Tennessee Titans offense has been nothing short of a complete and utter fucking dumpster fire wire, Elic Ayomanor continues to rise and rise up the hierarchy of this offense. In terms of snap counts in week 4, Ayomanor 82%, Tyler Lockett in my pocket skirt 72%, Cal Ridley 54%, Tremere Dyke 40%, and Van Jefferson, LA Rams legend, 38% of the snaps. First week where Ridley didn't lead the team in snaps. Now, I'm not going to full on panic because Brian Callahan, head coach of the team, said he was banged up. But deep down, I definitely do worry about Ridley because Ridley hasn't really done much this season, and Ayomanor has been outplaying him. Last week, up against the Houston Texans, didn't go too well for the Texans. Went very well for the Texans, actually, for the Titans, because they didn't score a single fucking point in that game. It was 28-0, I believe. 2 receptions on 7 targets for 44 yards. I think eventually the Titans offense will figure things out. So Ayomanor is still startable, but at the same time, based on what I saw last week, to me, he feels like more of just a bench stash. Maybe we prematurely started him last week. Next up, we got Tyler Allgeier, running back of the Atlanta Falcons, who was on bye this week, 40% rostered over on Sleeper. Another guy whose rostership percentage is far lower than I would have expected for a backup running back with the caliber of Tyler Allgeier. Before we talk about Tyler Allgeier, though, I would like to give you guys a quick word for our friend star partner over at Underdog. If you're brand new to Underdog, sign up using promo code Notorious or by clicking on the link in the video description. You'll get a free pick plus a first-time deposit offer of up to $1,000 in bonus funds, as well as if you play $5 in the pick'em, you will get a $100 in bonus funds put into your account. If you don't know how the pick'em works on Underdog, it's incredibly simple. You pick at least 2 players, they're higher or they're lower. If both picks hit, you get paid. If you do multiple other picks, the payout will be higher, but obviously all of the picks have to hit. Make sure you guys check that out, promo code Notorious, or by clicking on the link in the video description. Now, running back 26 in PPR last week for Allgeier, going up against the left hands up. Who are we? The Commanders. 16 carries for 51 yards and a touchdown. Now, his snap share does fluctuate weekly, as do the amount of touches that he is going to receive. So it is hard to truly quantify starting him, right? He has seen as many as 33% of the snaps out of the Falcons backfield and as few as 9% of the snaps in week 3, though that was a very weird game where the Falcons were just getting hammer-fisted by the Carolina Panthers. Not even remotely a close game, and that's kind of what happens. They just used Allgeier less. I will note that if you are in a pickle, right, if you are panicking at running back any given week, there are far worse options than Allgeier, who in any given week could find the end zone. And hopefully Michael Penix has really figured things out after what we saw up against the Commanders, and we get a much better version of this Falcons offense going forward coming out of the bye. So at the very least, you have a very high upside handcuff because if something happened to Bijan, knock on wood, we don't refer injuries. Tyler Allgeier legitimately could be a league winner. And if nothing happens, if you have to spot start him, you definitely could. Next up, we got Jalen Coker. I barely knew her. Wide receiver of the Carolina Panthers going up against the Miami Dolphins. 14% rostered over on Sleeper. Coker is eligible to return from IR this week. The initial thought earlier on in the offseason was that he would miss 4 to 6 weeks. So don't be shocked if he doesn't suit up here. If you are in a league with an IR spot and he is still in the IR by Tuesday when you actually go pick him up, then he should be stashed on your IR spot if you have one that isn't already harboring a different injured player because, you know, it's only week 5 and there's a million people that are injured. Because why wouldn't there be, right? What would be the fun of the NFL if just no one got hurt, right? We totally love seeing 8 million injuries every single week. Based on the play of any non-Tedero McMillan wide receiver in this offense, he should quickly be highly integrated into this offense. Last year, he popped off in 2 games. Week 8 up against the Broncos, 4 receptions on 6 targets for 78 yards and a touchdown as the wide receiver 17. Week 15 up against the Cowboys, 4 receptions on 6 targets for 110 yards and a touchdown as the wide receiver number 12. So we have seen his ability to play very well. And while the Carolina Panthers offense kind of reeks to high heaven as of right now, maybe inserting, you know, an actual competent wide receiver 2 onto this team that's not named Hunter Renfrow or fucking Xavier Legette, maybe that's able to give this offense the jumpstart, the boost that they need. At number 9, we got Kenneth Gainwell, running back of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Their team is on bye this week, 43% rostered over on Sleeper. Jaylen Warren missed last week with a knee injury in Ireland. Some of you guys were not up in the morning, left Jaylen Warren in your starting lineup, which obviously sucks. And that's why you got to just check your lineup right before the game starts. I get waking up at, like, if you're on the West Coast, 6 fucking a.m. to check your lineup, but you just kind of have to do it just to make sure you're not getting screwed over, which is exactly what we saw last week. We will see how Jaylen Warren possesses, but assuming that he is able to progress, I think I said possess, if he is able to progress and come back, then Gainwell will more than likely be taking the back seat like he has been the whole season. So while Gainwell may have proven to us that he is a very valid, valuable handcuff, unless Warren is out again, I would have zero confidence firing up Gainwell after the bye up against the Browns, which I think a lot of people are going to try to talk themselves into due to how good he looked in that Ireland game. Running back 3, 19 carries for 99 yards and not 1 but 2 touchdowns, 6 receptions on 6 targets for 35 yards. Caleb Johnson played just 21% of the snaps. That dude is a certified bust for fantasy. 77% of the snaps played for Gainwell. So in my opinion, Gainwell kind of reeks of the fool's gold, where people are trying to pick him up, assuming he is more than a handcuff, right? If you are just picking him up, you're able to get him for a couple fab dollars, you're able to pick him up with a later priority in the waiver wire priority system, then that is perfectly fine. Because you don't need to rely on him. You are not picking him up to rely on him. But if you think that Kenneth Gainwell has now taken the number 1 role away from Jaylen Warren, frankly, I just don't see that being the case. Next up, we got Darius Slayton, wide receiver of the New York Football Giants, going up against the New Orleans Saints in New Orleans, 5% rostered on Sleeper. Darius Slayton is just another ad that you add strictly because Malik Neighbors got hurt, and maybe that is going to greatly increase the target share of Darius Slayton. 3 receptions on 4 targets for 44 yards as the wide receiver 44 in PPR last week at home against the Chargers. Again, he had just a 15.4% target share on the offense last week, but if you do expect the Giants to be down in games, having to throw the ball late in games, that probably won't be the case up against the Saints, but up against better opponents, then Darius Slayton's the kind of guy that's a big deep threat that could have those big splashes in your fantasy lineup if you have to resort to starting him. Next up, we got Tyjae Spears, running back of the Tennessee Titans, going up against the LA Rams in SoFi, 35% rostered on Sleeper. Tyjae Spears is expected to return from IR this week, will have his 21-day practice window open. Tony Pollard really hasn't done anything this season and is far from an elite pass-catching running back, so we should see Spears get work once he does return. If the team continues getting pounded into submission week in and week out by other offenses, we will see Spears included a decent amount late in games. He is really just a speculative ad, though, at this point, because, again, the Titans' offense is so fucking bad that there's no way you can actually rely on playing him if he is able to go this week. Now, last year, in games where Tyjae Spears saw 10-plus touches, we're not talking about 15-plus touches, 20-plus touches, anything ridiculous, just 10-plus touches. 11.9 PPR points up against the Dolphins with Pollard in Week 4. Week 10 with Pollard, 8.1 PPR points. Week 15 with Pollard, 27.2%, 27.2 PPR points. Week 16 versus the Colts with Pollard, 21.6 PPR points. Week 17 up against the Jaguars without Pollard, 13.3 PPR points. So again, if this is a guy that is available on your waiver wire, he's worthy of that bench stash. Next up, we move to Kendre Miller, running back of the Saints, going up against the Giants, 7% rostered over on Sleeper. Now, in no way, Jose, does Alvin Kamara get eclipsed by Kendre Miller. That frankly just is not happening without an injury or without a trade. But I mention a trade because every single week, this team just loses. And every single game you lose, the more and more and more likely it is that as we knock on the door of the NFL trade deadline, that Alvin Kamara ends up getting moved, ends up getting traded. Now, will Alvin Kamara get traded to a position where he might actually heavily benefit? We shall see, where he will be great. But if he was to get moved, that would mean a whole lot for Kendre Miller. The previous coaching regime absolutely hated Kendre Miller. They were shitting on him left and right. And now, with a new head coaching regime, a new coaching staff, Kendre Miller has been able to actually get onto the field. Week 4, 73% of the snaps went to Kamara, 31% to Kendre Miller. He had 11 rushes for 26 yards and a touchdown. Kendre's snaps have increased weekly since week 2, but again, he is so much very clearly behind Alvin Kamara, so he's a nice handcuff right? With, if something happens to Kamara, knock on wood, you can throw Kendre Miller in there. And if we end up seeing Alvin Kamara get traded, Kendre Miller could instantly jolt himself into the RB2 conversation. Next up, we got mono man Sam Darnold, the quarterback of the Seattle Seahawks, going up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 28% rostered over on Sleeper. Quarterback 16 last week on Thursday Night Football in Arizona, 18 of 26 for 242 yards and a touchdown, one rush for 24 yards. Now, the way I look at Sam Darnold is very, very simple. Sam Darnold will not, by any means, be a league-winning quarterback. And what I mean by that is maybe he will have a week-winning game, right? Where you throw him into your lineup and maybe he goes crazy because the weapons there are solid. They've got some solid running backs. And Sam Darnold is a competent enough quarterback to have that big game. But when I say league winner, I mean put up a bunch of great games in a row, right? Put up a bunch of great games down the stretch of the season to where if you make your fantasy football playoffs, maybe you just eke in. He ends up putting the team on his back, dropping his nuts in the defense's mouth, teabag style, like it's Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. And that's why you won your league, because you have Sam Darnold. I don't think that will ever be the case, but he is a serviceable quarterback that can go into your lineup due to injuries or due to bye weeks. Again, he is not going to be this out-of-the-worldly type of player. He is not going to go fucking bananas 4 games in a row for you, but he's going to be good enough to, if the rest of your team is good, he'll be able to keep your fantasy teams head above water. Final guy is going to be a guy playing tonight, Ollie Gordon, running back of the Miami Dolphins, going up against the Carolina Panthers in Carolina. 44% rostered on Sleeper, so I can't rub the crystal ball that's so Raven style and tell you exactly who is, going to be scoring a ton of points tonight for the Dolphins. Maybe Ollie Gordon somehow becomes the RB1. That's not going to happen unless A-Chain gets hurt, right? But Ollie Gordon, based on what we saw last week, is the clear running back 2 behind A-Chain and is actually seeing touches down. 9 carries for 38 yards and a touchdown. If the Dolphins offense is able to, not look like the 2023 version themselves, because frankly, that's not in the cards right now. Tua is not playing remotely well enough for the offense to turn back the clock and be the 2023 version themselves. That's just not possible, right? Where Raheem Mostert and Devon Achane were tag teaming defenses, Generation X style week in and week out. I don't think that's going to happen, but if they're able to just be solid weekly, then Ollie Gordon has that touchdown upside to where if you're in a real pickle, you're struggling at running back, you can throw him in. And, if something bad was to happen to A-Chain, knock on wood, then Ollie Gordon would be a very viable player. And also, it is important to note that we have heard some news that maybe Bucky Irving might be more injured than what they he came back in the game last week. We thought maybe it was a concussion because he hit his head hard. Now they're going to do some MRIs. We'll monitor that situation. So I don't want to talk about Rachaad White as like a fucking must-own running back, must-own pickup, because he really is just holding the jockstrap of Bucky Irving right now. But if Bucky does miss time, then Rachaad White would obviously skyrocket up here, and we'd be talking about him potentially as like the number 2 waiver wire ad of the week. So that's just something to note as you follow what the injury news is. Maybe we get more information by later tonight on Monday, or more information by tomorrow on Tuesday before your waivers go through. So thank you guys all so much for watching. If you didn't enjoy, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button down below while you're down there. Whether you are new to the channel or not, make sure you leave a like on today's video to help me out a ton. If you want to follow me on Twitter or X, please do so at NotoriousFantasy. So without further ado, like we're starting the video. So thank you guys so much. I love you long time. Have a great one. As always, good boy.